So we're going to study about facial nerve. Facial nerve, its functional components and the anatomy of facial nerve. You know, it's the seventh cranial nerve. Okay, so what else you know about facial nerve? I think it's useless because it's only one-way connectivity. I think your chat box is blocked. So I'll just keep continuing. So facial nerve is the seventh cranial nerve, and everybody knows. I think by now you must have been taught about embryology, the branchial arches, and everything. So it's the nerve of the second branchial arch. Is it a pre-traumatic or a post-traumatic nerve? So it will be a post-traumatic nerve. Okay, post-traumatic nerve of the second branchial arch, and so obviously it will be, the functional component through which it will supply the muscles derived from the second branchial arch. That's called branchial efferent or special visceral efferent, right? And all those muscles of the facial expression, from where do these derive? That's, panniculus carnosus. Once I told you when I was teaching the muscles of the face, or the nerve supply of the face. So in the lower animals, there's subcutaneously, there's a thin sheet of muscle, skeletal muscle underneath the skin, and that's called pedunculus carnosus. In humans, that's embryologically it's there in the face region below the skin, and by the splitting of that pedunculus carnosus, so many different muscles of facial expression are, they're formed on the face. We're attached to the facial skeleton and to the skin. They inserted in the skin, so there's no deep fascia on the face, and that's why these muscles are called the muscles of facial expression. So let's study about the functional components of facial nerve. So there you can see, out of 7 functional components, I told you there were total 7 functional components through which the 12 cranial nerves were working. They were functional through 7 functional components. Out of the 5 functional components are involved in facial nerve. So first of all, this is the special visceral efferent, the branchial efferent. I told you it's efferent for the muscles derived from the second branchial arch, and all these muscles derived from the second branchial arch, they are basically the muscles of facial expression plus the muscles for few of the muscles, rather 2 muscles, which help in elevating the hyoid bone. That includes posterior digastric and stylohyoid, right? So these muscles, and even remember the muscles of the scalp also, that is occipitofrontalis. So muscles of the face, muscles of the scalp, and the 2 muscles which help in elevating the hyoid bone. So these are the muscles derived from facial nerve, and they are all innervated by facial nerve. Now again, the same question again arises, that which muscle of facial expression is not innervated by facial nerve? The answer will be levator palpebrae superioris, and that is a muscle which is innervated by oculomotor nerve, as well as sympathetic fibers to the smooth muscle component of that LPS called Muller's muscle. Then the next functional column is general visceral efferent. General visceral efferent, this functional column provides efferent fibers to innervate the smooth muscles. Right? This is an autonomic functional column to innervate the smooth muscles. And here the purpose is to provide nerve supply to, this is actually secretomotor fibers to the glands. Each gland, every gland, they have this myoepithelial cells, which are smooth muscle cells in the glands. So through this general visceral efferent functional component, it's a parasympathetic outflow through which it innervates the lacrimal gland, the mucosal glands of the nose, palate, oral cavity, right, pharynx. Plus, it also innervates the glands like, sublingual, submandibular, anterior lingual, posterior lingual glands. Then there are three afferents. The three afferents, remember which functional column is missing here in the efferent, and that is general visceral efferent, right? The general, remember that general visceral efferent, which is supposedly homologous to the anterior horn of the spinal cord. General somatic efferent is missing here in facial nerve. General somatic efferent is missing, and that is same as the anterior horn of the spinal cord. So general somatic efferent was to innervate the voluntary muscles derived from somites or somatomeres, right? So facial nerve do not have that function. Then you have among the afferents, this one is general visceral afferent. Remember, general visceral afferent is the most medial functional column in the LR lamina. General visceral afferent will bring, general means exteroceptive sensations, including proprioceptive sensations from the viscera or the glands which it innervates, right? Touch, pressure, vibration, pain from these mucosal areas, from the glands it innervates. Then you have special visceral afferent. Special visceral afferent means the special sensations, right? So it's the gustatory sensation which it brings from the anterior two-thirds of the tongue as well as from the palate, except the circumvallate papillae. So this sensation of taste, which is brought in the facial nerve, is categorized as special visceral afferent. And both these, general visceral afferent and special visceral afferent, they will reach to which nucleus? Nucleus tractus solitarius. Then general somatic afferent. General somatic afferent will, this is homologous to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, general somatic afferent. So it will bring in, exteroceptive sensations, including proprioceptive sensations from the surface of the body. And here in this case, it's bringing sensations from the external auditory meatus and the area around it. And this is maybe a direct branch or maybe through the auricular branch of vagus, through its communication to the auricular branch of vagus. There is enough supply at the entry of external auditory meatus by facial nerve also. And apart from that, remember you've been taught about third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerves. This functional column was included in the pure motor nerves, third, fourth, and sixth also, because the muscles which are being innervated by motor nerves, the sensations of proprioception from those muscles have to be brought in, right? So here also, general somatic afferent not only bringing exteroceptive sensations, but also proprioceptive sensations from the muscles innervated by facial nerve, right? And all these proprioceptive sensations will reach to the mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve. So that was about the functional components of facial nerve, and here you're seeing is the functional columns. Many times I've been telling you about this, has to be kept in mind so that you have some idea, because later on I'm going to teach you about the brain stem. So you have to have this idea how they are located, the nuclei, they have this fixed pattern. Medially it is the basal lamina, this is medial to sulcus limitans, and laterally it is LR plate or LR lamina, lateral to the sulcus limitans. This is a one-sided diagram, this is a midline you can see. So facial nerve, I told you there, by the way, there was, let me ask you, yes, which functional column is missing in the afferent group? That is special somatic afferent, which is an exclusive functional column, and in the LR lamina, the lateral most functional column, remember? special somatic afferent, and that was including, the eighth cranial nerve, sensations of balance and hearing. So that functional column is also not included in facial nerve. So you can remember it very easily like this way. Out of the 7 functional column, the most medial, the most lateral. Got it? So it will be easy for you. So facial nerve includes 5 out of 7 functional columns, excluding the most medial and the most lateral functional columns, right? So it will be easy for you to remember. Hi, it will be better, I think, if you keep raising your hands, because I'm not like able to see a chat window. So at least I'll be, get to know that you all are connected. Good. So here you're seeing is this, yeah, 7 functional column. The most medial, you don't find facial nerve here. Got it? And the most lateral, you don't find functional column here. This is special somatic afferent, and this one is general somatic efferent. So remaining 5 functional columns you will find facial nerve. This is the functional column which will innervate the muscles derived from branchial arches. So special visceral efferent. So you find that facial nerve motor nucleus will be found at the lower pons. The lower pons just adjacent to the abducent nerve nucleus, right? Okay, then in the general visceral efferent, you have 2 nucleus here, lacrymatory and superior salivatory nucleus. These are located and at the lower portion of the pons actually, and some authors don't write lacrymatory nucleus separately. They suppose that lacrymatory nucleus is a part of superior salivatory nucleus. So they mention it as lacrimosalivatory nucleus as the superior salivatory nucleus. So by the way, you can remember both of them, that in the lower pons, there are 2 nuclei, lacrymatory nucleus and superior salivatory nucleus in the general visceral efferent functioning column. They are related with facial nerve. And this lacrymatory, obviously, is for the secretions from the lacrimal gland and other mucosal glands from the maxillary area on the face. And this is for the salivation, submandibular, sublingual, anterior and posterior lingual glands. Okay. Then about the afferents, and afferents, as I told you, that visceral afferent, general visceral afferent, right? So it will bring sensations from the glands and viscera, it innervates. So extraceptive pain, temperature, pressure, right? As well as, these sensations from the viscera, right? So they will be brought in here in this general visceral afferent nucleus, and this functional column belongs to the lower portion of nucleus tractus solitarius, right? These 2 functional columns actually join to form a single nucleus, elongated nucleus extending from the open part to the closed part of the medulla, right? So this portion is general. So general, I said something is, located in the lower portion of salivatory nucleus, while the special ones are above. So this special visceral afferent, this also will be located in the upper portion of the nucleus tractus solitarius. And here it will be, the taste sensation will be brought in, right, from the anterior to the tongue and the palate, except the circumvallate papillae. Good. Then the functional column, the general somatic afferent, remember it was bringing pain, temperature, pressure sensations from the external auditory meatus and pinna and area around. And that was either through the auricular branch of facial nerve or through the communicating branch to the auricular branch of vagus. So in short, it is bringing those extraceptive sensations from the area of the pinna near the external auditory meatus. So this facial nerve you will find here in the spinal nucleus as well, the fibers, such sensations will be brought into the spinal nucleus and even to the chief sensory, because chief sensory receives the exteroceptive sensations of touch, pressure, vibration. So it will be brought in here also, and in the spinal nucleus, pain and temperature and fine touch, that sensations from the pinna will be brought here. And the muscles and the proprioceptive sensations from the muscles derived from the second branchial arch, those sensations of proprioception will be brought here in the mesencephalic nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Got it? So you'll find facial nerve is communicating through all these 5 functional columns of the brain stem, except the medial most, except the lateral most. Okay? Are you connected? Raise your hand. Very good. So now we'll just see in these further slides the location of these nuclei, where they're located. First of all, special visceral efferent, the branchial efferent nucleus. This nucleus is for the muscles of facial expression. Here you find that this nucleus is located, you can see its pons, the midbrain and the medulla. So motor nucleus, blue is the motor nuclei in the diagram. The red ones are the sensory nuclei in the diagram. And the green one is the one which we are talking about. So facial nerve nucleus is the motor nucleus we are seeing here in the lower portion of the pons. And many times I've been telling you that the fibers move backwards medially to cross the abducens nerve nucleus, then wind there to become close to this trigeminal nerve, superior sensory nucleus, as well as spinal nucleus. To get this approximity, and this movement is neurobiotaxis, and while doing so it gives a bulge there on the the floor of the fourth ventricle called facial colliculus. And remember, why is this communicating? Because remember, I just told you that muscles, the proprioceptive sensations from the muscles of the facial expression, they will be reaching to the trigeminal nerve nucleus, and accordingly you'll have to have the expressions. Remember, agar if like a bee sit is on your face, bee sits on your face, right? So you automatically you make an expression like you wince your face. So that's the reflex being formed. So that's why they, to make this close proximity to the trigeminal nucleus, this is the way facial nerve fibers wind and become approximated to the trigeminal nucleus. That is called neurobiotaxis. Okay. Then another very important point about this motor nucleus of facial nerve, that remember this obviously it will have upper motor neurons, lower motor neurons, just like any other efferent nuclei. So fibers coming from upper motor region, like motor cortex, the descending fibers, upper motor neurons, to the upper part of the face. Remember, to the upper part of the face, the upper motor neurons, or you can say corticonuclear fibers, reaching to the facial nucleus, they have a bilateral representation. So from both ipsilateral and contralateral motor cortex, fibers descend facial nerve nucleus, and from there the lower motor neurons will innervate the upper part of the face. That means upper part of the face has a bilateral representation in the cerebral cortex, while the fibers from only the contralateral side, cerebral hemisphere, this motor cortex, area number 4, that is precentral gyrus, right? So from there, these fibers, they descend down into the facial nerve nucleus, but only in the contralateral nucleus. See? So these fibers will reach, the lower motor neurons will supply only the lower part of the face. Got it? So in short, you remember that your lower half of the face has only contralateral representation at the cerebral cortex, while your upper part of the face has a bilateral representation in the cerebral cortex. This is very important to understand that facial nerve lesions, supranuclear lesions and infranuclear lesions, right? Remember that the infranuclear lesion of the facial nerve is called Bell's palsy, not the upper. Okay, good. Now the other nucleus is special visceral efferent. Remember, this was for superior salivatory nucleus, special visceral efferent. This will, sorry, this is general visceral efferent. General visceral efferent is parasympathetic outflow, right, to the smooth muscles. And this, I told you, it includes the lacrimatory nucleus as well. So fibers from this superior lacrimatory nucleus, they will pass out and will join this facial nerve and will, you know, will come out along with the facial nerve, and they even join this nervous, you know, you can see the red color nerve arising along with facial nerve, but it is lateral to the facial nerve, and that's nervous intermediate, the sensory different. General visceral from general sensations from the glands it innervates, and special visceral afferent is for the taste sensations, right, from the anterior to the tongue, palate, and except the circumvallate papilla. Good. So these sensations are brought in through this nervous intermedius, the sensory component, because now we are talking about it, the afferent pathway. So these sensations will be brought in through nervous intermediates, and you can see that it is continuing down here with the nucleus tractus solitarius, right? So both these sensations, both these functional components, the nucleus is embedded in this nucleus tractus solitarius. In the lower portion is the general visceral afferent, in the upper portion it is special visceral afferent. Okay. Now about the general somatic afferents. General somatic afferent we are talking is the proprioceptive sensations. These are sensations from the muscles derived from second branchial arch, and these sensations will be brought in through facial nerve, but they will relay there in the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. This you can say is a trigeminal nerve nucleus which ascends up in the midbrain, reaching up till the level of superior colliculus. Got it? Okay. Then these sensations, as I said, is general somatic afferent, which includes sensations of touch, pressure, and vibrations from the pinna. These sensations will be brought in through the facial nerve, and they will relay here in the superior, the main sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Then the general somatic afferent, it also includes the sensations of pain, temperature, and fine touch. These sensations from the pinna, they will be brought in through the facial nerve, and they will relay here in the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. You can see the spinal nucleus, it is reaching down into the spinal cord. That's why it's called spinal nucleus, and it reaches to around C2 spinal segment. Okay, good. So we have got to know enough about the nuclei and the functional columns of the facial. Now we'll start talking about the course of the facial nerve. So we'll start with the intraneural course. Okay, intraneural course may you can see here. This is a cut section of pons in the lower section, transverse section to the lower part of the pons. So in the lower part of the pons, you can see that the dorsal side, it is not closed, rather it is open. That I told you is point of demarcation in the upper and lower portion of the pons. If a diagram is there of upper portion of the pons, you will find it will be covered, it will be closed, the right. So upper portion of the pons, you will find that the fourth ventricle is closed from above, but here it will be found that the fourth ventricle, this is the fourth ventricle, so this is exposed from backside and it will be covered by cerebellum. So, and now you'll see here, this is the basal portion of the pons, right? So you form pontine nuclei along with the corticonuclear corticospinal fibers here. That makes it a bulge it here ventrally, the bulge in the pons. And this nerve I have already taught you is abducent nerve. It straight away ventrally descends down, crossing the medial lemniscus and crossing the trapezoid body. Then these corticonuclear spinal fibers emerges on the medial aspect of the pontomedullary junction or the lower portion of the pons. Then about facial nerve nucleus, as I said, fibers pass dorsally, medially, winding the abducent nerve, and then it also, you can see, is crossing the lateral spinothalamic tract and the trapezoid body, and it ultimately it emerges on the surface of the brain laterally from the pontomedullary junction or the lower portion of the pons and lateral to the abducent nerve. And even there will be another nerve arising here, and that will be nervus intermedius that will arise on the pontomedullary junction just lateral to the facial nerve, that has a separate uh, initially when this the nerves arise from the ventral portion of the brain stem. This nervus intermedius is a separate nerve. Remember, in the case of trigeminal also, the sensory division, the main division was placed laterally, while there was a motor component of the motor division of the trigeminal nerve emerging separately, medial to the origin of trigeminal nerve. Similarly here, the sensory component of facial nerve will arise separately, lateral to the facial nerve. Okay. Then this is the dorsal aspect of the brain stem with this diamond shaped fourth ventricle. This is the upper closed portion of the pons. This is the lower open portion of the pons. This is the upper open portion of the medulla. This is the lower closed portion of the medulla. So in between, the purpose of showing you this diagram is that you find the two bulges here, and these are the facial colliculus, right? And these colliculus are formed because of the winding of the facial nerve fibers around the abducent nerve nucleus. Hello, are you connected? Please raise your hands. Good. Okay. Now we'll talk. We've done about the intraneural course. Now the nerve has already emerged out from the brain. Now we'll talk about the intracranial course. Obviously, if a nerve emerges, it will first of all bathe in itself in the subarachnoid space. Got it? And here it will be the, pontine cistern or cisterna pontis. Surrounding this pontomedullary junction, there is this subarachnoid cistern called cisterna pontis. So this nerve, when it emerges, facial nerve, when it emerges, it will first bathe itself in the subarachnoid space called pontine cistern. Here you can see this is the pontomedullary junction, and this is emerging here. Remember, abducent was emerging above the pyramids at the pontomedullary junction medially. Facial nerve will emerge above the olives. These are the anterolateral bulges on the upper portion of the medulla. These are the olives. So in the pontomedullary junction, laterally just above the olives, you find is facial nerve that emerges out from the pontomedullary junction. Okay, and lateral to that will be the earth or the vestibulocochlear nerve. Now, this is how where you find is facial nerves intracranial cords. First of all, you must remember that this is the fold of the dura, the tentorium cerebelli, that has been cut to expose the posterior cranial fossa or the subtentorial compartment. That means you should remember that facial nerve emerges in the posterior cranial fossa or the subtentorial compartment, and it completely stays there. It doesn't move to any other cranial fossa. Unlike abducent nerve was emerging in the posterior cranial fossa, crossing the middle cranial fossa, and reaching the orbits. But here you can see this is the posterior, this is the foramen magnum, this is spinal cord, and now you find that this is the hypoglossal canal. Obviously, this facial, this is this 12th cranial nerve. It emerges from anterior condylar canal or hypoglossal canal. Then there are three nerves, 9, 10th, and 11th. 9, 10th, and 11th. Why have they shown it here this way? Because it is the spinal root of 11th nerve, spinal root of accessory nerve. So they join together three nerves, 9, 10th, and 11th. They will pass out through the jugular foramen, and jugular foramen is between petrous and occipital bone. It's not a true foramen. So the three nerves you can see is passing down here to the jugular foramen, and you can see that it is this transverse and sigmoid sinus which also emerges out through the posterior portion of jugular foramen in the form of internal carotid artery, internal jugular vein. Okay, so that is the area of jugular foramen. Above to that, now you're seeing here, this attachment of tentorium cerebelli, actually it lodges the superior petrosal sinus here, right? And below to that, here on the posterior surface of the petrous temporal bone, you find is an internal acoustic meatus or internal auditory meatus. Just like you have an external auditory meatus on the outside of the skull. So this is an internal auditory meatus. And through this opening, there will be three nerves which will enter inside. It will be facial nerve, nervus intermedius, and vestibulocochlear nerve. The three cranial nerves, they will enter into the internal acoustic meatus. So that means they have a very short intracranial course, right? Because the pons is resting here on the clivus, right? Pons also is a content of posterior cranial fossa. So it has a very short course, intracranial course. It arises and soon it moves forwards and laterally in the cisterna pontis and reaches to this internal acoustic meatus where it enters along with the eighth cranial nerve. You can even see this trigeminal nerve which arises from the upper portion of the pons. This is the apex of petrous temporal. So it pushes this dura along with it, and that forms a Meckel's cave, and there it divides into three divisions in the middle cranial fossa. Anyways, we'll stick to this point. We have to talk about this further. So they find is internal acoustic meatus with the three nerves entering inside, and one another nerve that reaches inside is the nervus intermedius. Now remember that this nervus intermedius is also called nerve of Wisberg. Nerve of Wisberg. Hold on. Okay, nervus intermedius is the sensory component of the facial nerve. This is also called nerve of Wisberg. Before talking about this nerve, I'm reminded of something related to Wisberg. If you remember, anybody, there was a ligament of Wisberg. Who will tell me? I mean, I'm sorry, you cannot answer me because the chat window is already blocked. So I'll have to tell you. So let me remind you that ligament of Wisberg is also, there's a ligament, there are two ligaments rather, meniscofemoral ligaments in the knee joint, remember. There was an anterior and posterior meniscofemoral ligaments binding the lateral meniscus to the tibia. And these meniscofemoral ligaments, binding the lateral meniscus to the femur, right? Medial condyle of femurs attached over it from the lateral meniscus. These meniscofemoral ligaments are two in number, anterior and posterior meniscofemoral ligament. Anterior is called ligament of Humphrey, and posterior meniscofemoral ligament is called ligament of Witzberg. और याद करने के लिए the जो mnemonic है so called is that H comes before W. So anterior will be Humphrey. A for anterior, that means anterior comes before posterior, right? So anterior will be Humphrey and Witzberg will be the posterior meniscofemoral ligament. Okay. Anyways, so now of Witzberg we're talking is that intermediate nerve, nervous intermediate, nerve Witzberg, and another name you can call it as glossopalatine nerve. Now think about why glossopalatine nerve. Because the purpose here is it's a sensory nerve, so it's bringing taste sensations mainly, right? So taste sensations and the other sensations from the tongue and palate also. Taste sensations also from the tongue and the palate also. So because it is bringing sensations from the tongue and palate, that's why you call it as glossopalatine nerve. It is part of the facial nerve, cranial nerve 7th, and located between the motor component of the facial nerve and the vestibulocochlear nerve. The three nerves, when they'll enter in the intercostic meatus, they will be arranged such that this intermediate, that's why it's called intermedius, because it is lying intermediate between the motor nucleus of facial nerve and the vestibulocochlear nerve. So that's why it's intermedius. Okay. It contains the sensory and parasympathetic fibers of the facial nerve. Of course, the parasympathetic fibers, which will ultimately reach the submandibular region, will pass through this nerve and then via the chordate tympani later on. Okay. Now we'll talk ultimately when this nerve, intraneural we have done, intracranial of course we've done. Now when this nerve enters into the intercostic meatus, now this course will be called as intrapetrous course. Intrapetrous means within the petrous temporal bone, and in this portion of the bone you have this the bony portion of the external ear, then completely the middle ear and internal ear. This canal, this internal auditory canal, will be somewhat related to the internal ear as well as the middle ear. So you can see here, this is the structures in the left internal acoustic meatus. Okay. So when you find, first of all, you can see this is the wall, the bony wall of the internal acoustic meatus, and it is lined by the three meninges, right? It will have a dura, then you have arachnoid and pia also. And remember, while I was teaching you about the meninges, I told you that the three sensory nerves, pure sensory nerves, like first, second, and eighth. That way I told you, it will help you remember that these nerves are supposedly like extensions of the brain. So they're completely covered with meninges throughout their intracranial, throughout their course. Rather, these nerves actually stay within the cranium only. So these are covered by the three meninges. So because along with facial nerve also is moving together, so the three nerves here inside you'll find is the motor component of the facial nerve, and this is the vestibulocochlear nerve. In between the two nerves you have this nervus intermedius. So there are three nerves which are entering into the internal acoustic meatus. They're all surrounded by meninges, even including the subarachnoid space, CSF also. And of course, this portion needs to have its own blood supply because it's going deep inside the cave. I mean, it's a canal. So these are the labyrinthine vessels Labyrinthine artery is branch of basilar artery. Okay. Then when it moves this course, in its course it moves forwards and laterally. Then at the floor, or you can say it dips down in the fundus of this internal acoustic meatus. There is a dilatation in the floor, or you can say in the end of this short canal, there is a bulging called the fundus of the internal acoustic meatus. So this diagram here you're seeing is the fundus of internal acoustic meatus. What you'll find, it is actually divided by a transverse crest. So after being divided into crest, it has two cavities here, above and below. Okay. So remember that facial nerve will, at the level of fundus of this interacoustic meatus, facial nerve will cross from above the transverse crest, right? And the cochlear nerve will pass below the transverse crest. Okay. Then about the vestibular nerve, right? So facial and cochlear nerve are easy. Facial will be running above. Otherwise, here also you can see that facial nerve was running above, right? So facial nerve will pass above the transverse crest. Cochlear nerve will pass below the transverse crest. Then about the vestibular nerve, and you know vestibular nerve. Let me ask you, it must have been taught to you in physiology in detail. These are actually first, second, and eighth cranial nerve are taught in detail in physiology. So the sensations of dynamic balance, kinetic balance, and static balance. The receptors for static balance are brought in through the macula, right? Macula present in the utricle and saccule. And there is kinetic balance. This is brought in through the crista of the semicircular canals, right? So you have three semicircular canals, you know that. So superior vestibular area, it's this, for fibers from crista of anterior and lateral semicircular canals. So fibers coming from the anterior and lateral semicircular canals, they will pass here from the superior vestibular area. Vestibular, you know, vestibular nerve की बात हो रही है, so it will be easy कि upper portion is superior vestibular area and this one is inferior vestibular area. Now inferior vestibular area में क्या पास होंगे? Dynamic, static balance के लिए क्या था? From the macula of utricle and saccule. So remember the fibers from the crista of anterior and lateral semicircular canals. ये तो kinetic balance का sensations है. In the upper portion, superior vestibular area. Then static balance का macula से, utricle and saccule से, these fibers will pass through the inferior vestibular area. Now what remains is crista of the posterior semicircular canals. Okay, that will pass from the inferior vestibular area, and that portion is called foramen singulare. Okay. So remember this much, that this has a separate pathway or passage within this inferior vestibular area. Otherwise, these are bringing the kinetic balance sensation, these are bringing the static balance sensations, and this one is also bringing the kinetic balance sensations from the crista of the posterior semicircular canal. This is passing to the foramen singulare, right? So anyways, we are focusing now here is on the facial canal. So at the fundus, passing into the interacoustic meatus, it will reach to the fundus, and from the fundus it will continue in the canal of facial nerve, right? So from there we will connect to this diagram. This is the canal of facial nerve, right? So before to that, this much portion here, it is internal acoustic meatus, then it's a fundus here. From the fundus it will continue. Now facial nerve will continue. Actually at the fundus, the three nerves, they have the separate, of course, like intermediates will join the facial nerve here at the fundus. while vestibular and cochlear nerve, they have the different course from here. But facial nerve at the fundus, remember the nervous intermedius which was running here in between will join the facial nerve at the fundus. Now together, facial nerve will enter into the facial canal. And in the facial canal, you can see it actually, let me tell you this, the entire diagram here from this facial canal, now it will pass out of the skull through the stylomastoid foramen. So this much course is the intrapetrous course. Now in the intrapetrous course, this facial nerve has two bend. One is a sharp bend that is called genu, and there is a second bend which is not so sharp and it's called a gradual bend. Okay, and because of these two bends, you have three parts: first part, second part, and a third part. That's how the course of petrous, intrapetrous course of facial nerve is defined. So you can see that this is this course. The first part, it runs laterally above the vestibule. So this portion is running above the, that means this much, because you know ultimately if you remember the cranium, you know this nerve is moving forwards and laterally. Okay, so it will first cross the internal ear and then it will reach to the in medial relation to the middle ear cavity. So the first part will cross above the vestibule, and when it reaches the genu, right? So this genu where it is lies is anterior superior to the promontory. Now promontory is a bulged thing, bulging here on the medial wall of the middle ear cavity. So the genu rests above the promontory, right? And genu means a bend. So there you find is a ganglion here. This is called geniculate ganglion, like, you know, because it also is a sensory nerve, because nervous intermediate has been included in this. And, you know, it's homologous to dorsal root ganglion of the spinal nerves. Similarly was Gasserian ganglion in the trigeminal nerve. And similarly, because it also is a sensory, it also has sensory components, three sensory components rather. So the collection of the first order pseudo unipolar neurons, the cytons, they form this ganglion here. This is the geniculate ganglion. The second part, you can say, has a gradual bend. This is the second bend here. This is lying, you can say, you know, anterosuperior to the promontory. Anterosuperior to ye hai. Now this will lie actually a little behind the promontory, or you can say posterior-superior to the promontory. Okay. The second part, you can say, is in relation to the medial wall of the middle ear, and it is running above the promontory. Now the second bend is posterior superior to the promontory, and the third part, it runs behind the promontory. You can make easily the relations, because let me tell you, first have this orientation of the diagram. This you're seeing is the facial nerve of the left middle ear. So imagine you're seeing with the otoscope, you're seeing the left middle ear cavity from the lateral side. So you'll have this idea. If you're seeing the left middle ear cavity from the lateral side, so this will be how it will be arranged. This is the anterior thing, this is the posterior thing, superior and inferior. So you can easily see the relations. Now geniculate ganglion is anterosuperior. This second part is running above the promontory. Second bend is posterior superior. Third part is lying behind the promontory. Okay. And the second part runs between, because you know middle ear cavity is divided into two parts. You have the proper tympanic cavity, which is like opposite to the eardrum or the tympanic membrane, and you have a superior extension of this middle ear cavity, which is called the tympanic recess, right? Or epitympanic recess, which lodges the ear ossicles. So through that, it has a communication to the mastoid portion also, and that is called adductus to the mastoid antrum, right? So facial nerve in its second part, it crosses between the promontory and adductus to the mastoid antrum. Got it? And it is that this second, third portion actually, this will, the beginning of the third portion, it will give its branch to stapedius muscle. Remember, it also is derived from the second branchial arch. Okay, so that was about the intrapetrous course. We'll have more diagrams to check this. You can see this is a coronal section, right? It's a coronal section through the petrous temporal bone. Here you find is the external auditory meters, the tympanic membrane here. This is the middle ear cavity. And as I told you, this portion just lying opposite to the tympanic membrane, this much portion is called the tympanic cavity proper. And the portion extending above this much portion is called epitympanic recess. You can see the ear malleus and incus, they're being lodged here in the epitympanic recess, right? So then you find is this internal ear, the two components, one is cochlea and this is the vestibular area. We have, saccule and utricle here, and these are the three semicircular canals, right? So yes, so talking about this, you can see this is the posterior surface of the petrous temporal bone, and you can see this is the pharynx, and pharynx is what is communicating to the anterior wall of the middle ear cavity. This is the pharyngotympanic tube, also called auditory tube, right? Okay. So you have this orientation of the diagram. Now you'll see this is the internal acoustic meatus, through which this is the facial nerve and vestibulocochlear nerve, as well as the nervus intermedius. Three of them enter inside. And while reaching the fundus, they all separate out. Cochlear nerve in the inferior vestibular area will reach to the cochlea. Then you have the vestibular nerves, which will reach to the respective macula and crista, right? Then this is facial nerve. Now we'll talk about facial nerve while entering into this, reaching the fundus. Now this will further in its course will be called the facial canal. After reaching the fundus, the course of the facial nerve is described as it's running in the facial canal in the petrous temporal bone. So here you're seeing this is the vestibule, right? And here it is running, it will be running here above the vestibule, the first portion. And then it will reach down here. This is the promontory. There was a bulging here. And ultimately, can you see this yellow color thing? This is the second and the third part down of the facial nerve. Got it? Okay. So here you can see this, after crossing the vestibule, it will crossing the first part and the genu. Now it will reach here as the second part. Got it? This is the second part of the facial nerve. And you can see, if you can really appreciate that the medial wall of the tympanic cavity has this bulgy thing. I mean, it has like this impression on the medial wall of the middle ear, and that's the elevation of the facial canal. See this cavity, this is a matchbox shaped cavity, the middle ear cavity, and we're talking about the intrapetrous course of the facial nerve. You can see this is the medial wall of the middle ear cavity. Now what we are seeing is the right middle ear cavity from the lateral side. First have this orientation. We are seeing the right middle ear cavity from the lateral side. So this is anterior and this is posterior. This is superior and this is inferior. Okay. So that's why remember, anterior wall has three important structures. Upper portion has tensor tympani, then you have the auditory tube opening, and the lower portion of the anterior wall is called it is in relation to the internal carotid artery. Okay, and the floor is in relation with the internal jugular vein, right? posterior, you can see above you have this communication to the mastoid, and that's called mastoid adductus to the mastoid antrum. And the posterior wall also is related to the facial canal, right? And the superior, superior, the roof of the middle cavity, medullary cavity is formed by tegmen tympani. Tegmen tympani you can see in the middle cranial fossa as the anterior wall of the petrous temporal bone. Okay, so now on the middle while you find this bulging, the promontory, and this tympanic branch of glossopharyngeal nerve enters here and it forms a tympanic plexus, and this tympanic plexus gives a lesser petrosal nerve. Remember, for the otic ganglion, this will pass from here and will emerge out in the middle cranial fossa through the hiatus for the lesser petrosal nerve. Then you from this sympathetic plexus on the internal carotid, right? And this actually reaches the cavernous sinus, so this is also called cavernous plexus. From there you have this communication with the tympanic plexus. This is the sympathetic communication to the tympanic plexus, and also it gives a branch here in the middle here, and that's called tympan. Actually, hold on, this is called carotico-tympanic nerve. Now look here, this is lateral semicircular canal, like, and this is the oval window cover. It will be covered by steps, right? So this is the prominence of the facial canal. So facial canal is running posterior superiorly here as the second part. Then the third part will run behind the posterior wall. This is the second bent. Then in its course, you can see here it is giving, in its third part, it's giving two branches. One, you can see it reaches to supply this stapedius muscle, which is attached to the pyramidal process on the posterior wall. So this is the branch to stapedius muscle, and it also gives a branch here that's called cauda tympani. This cauda tympani branch enters the medullary cavity through the canal, bony canal, and although they have shown it a little below, it actually is high up, and it runs like a thread. You know what we are seeing is what actually the wall which is not drawn here is because that has been removed, and it's the lateral wall of the medullary cavity that has been exposed, right? That has been removed to expose the contents of the medullary cavity. So that lateral wall is formed by tympanic membrane, right? So one important thing I want to tell you is that cauda tympani is in very close relation to the tympanic membrane on the inside, and it runs between malleus and incus, and ultimately it perforates the anterior wall of the medullary cavity, and this is called petrotympanic recess, okay, or fissure. Petrotympanic fissure से this cauda tympani will emerge out, and after being emerged out, it will further join the lingual nerve to reach to the tongue. Okay. Then here you seeing is this internal acoustic meatus. Facial nerve enters it, it reaches the fundus, and remember, in the fundus it was having its first acute bent, sharp bent, and that was called genu, right? That's called genu. So this is geniculate ganglion located at the genu of the facial nerve. And remember that genu of the facial nerve has 2-3 communications and a branch also. This branch arising from the geniculate ganglion is called greater petrosal nerve. Greater petrosal nerve, you can see, is perforating the tegmen tympani. Tegmen tympani, which is forming the anterior wall of the petrous temporal bone. So it perforates here, and through the hiatus for the greater petrosal nerve, it emerges out and will reach to the foramen lacerum. And there you know it's this deep petrosal nerve which will join to form the nerve of pterygoid canal. Okay. Then this is the second portion which is running above the steps And below the lateral semicircular canal, this is the bulging of the lateral semicircular canal, and this the third part of the facial canal. Here you see this is the nerve to stapedius. This is the pyramidal process. This is the stylomastoid foramen, and a little above to this, around 6 millimeters above to this, you find it's the third branch, intrapetrous branch of facial nerve, chordae tympani, and which will reach into the middle ear. Now look here, the course of chordae tympani. As I was telling, that chordae tympani is in close relation to the tympanic membrane. So you have, this diagram. This is another view. Now this is the view of right middle ear cavity seen from medial side. Make sure you're getting oriented with this diagram. This is the right middle ear cavity seen from the medial side. So what you're seeing is the tympanic membrane, which is convex on the medial side, right? And this is malleus attached to the tympanic membrane, and this is incus, right? So here between the tympanic and the styloid, this is the petrous portion. Here down will be the styloid process of the temporal bone. So between the mastoid process and the styloid process, there is this foramen called stylomastoid foramen, through which this facial nerve will emerge out. But remember, before emerging out around 6 millimeter above, it gives this third branch, intrapetrous branch, that is called chordae tympani. This chordae tympani will pass through the bony canal and perforate and reaches to the middle ear cavity. And I was telling that it runs a little high above in the middle ear cavity, so that it passes between the malleus and incus. It passes between the malleus and incus in its course. Then it reaches the petrotympanic fissure, and it emerges on the base of the skull through the petrotympanic fissure and reaches the supratemporal fossa. Okay? And in the infratemporal fossa, it will reach the infratemporal fossa, where, and it will, remember, this will descend down. Here it will be the styloid process. The two important relations. Facial nerve will run lateral to the styloid process, while chordae tympani will emerge medial to the styloid process. Down below, this chordae tympani will join the lingual nerve. Now, for people who haven't understood the relations here, this is the this is the floor of the cranial cavity seen from inside. This is the petrous temporal bone, right? And this anterior surface, which you're seeing in the as the posterior wall of the middle cranial fossa, this portion is called tegmen tympani. And onto this tegmen tympani, there will be two small foramina, two small openings. And these are the hiatus for greater petrosal and hiatus for lesser petrosal nerve. And then they lead with the groove also. There's the groove also. From this opening, the greater petrosal nerve will emerge from the middle ear. It will emerge out here, and it will run towards foramen lacerum. This is foramen lacerum, right? So this is hiatus and groove for the greater petrosal nerve, where it will join the deep petrosal nerve to form the Vedian nerve. Now this is hiatus for the lesser petrosal nerve, right? And this lateral petrosal nerve is coming from the tympanic plexus, right? A branch from glossopharyngeal nerve. It will soon emerge out through it also has a groove, right? Its groove is directed towards foramen ovale, M-A-L-E, remember? L for lesser petrosal nerve. So here it will emerge out through the foramen ovale and will join the facial V3 component of trigeminal nerve, and it will relay in the otic ganglion. Sometimes, let me tell you, it's not necessary that occasionally it has been found to pass out through foramen spinosum also. And there is an innominate foramen, sometimes even posterior to the foramen spinosum. That's innominate foramen or Android's foramen, some Arnold's foramen, sometimes it's said as. So, but most common is the foramen ovale. That's the passage of lesser petrosal nerve. Now, in this diagram, you can see here that this is the right tympanic cavity seen from the medial side. This is the course of chorda tympani from the posterior wall of the middle ear, passing between the malleus and incus. Then it reaches the anterior wall, pierces the, perforates, passes through the petrotympanic fissure. Okay? And they haven't shown the codes. It is also giving branch to this is stapedius, and to which it is attached. This portion of bone is called pyramidal eminence. Okay. Okay. Same thing here. Tympanic plexus they have shown here. Lesser petrosal nerve they have shown here. Branches from the internal carotid and everything is shown. This is the prominence of facial canal. Okay. And the second part you can see is running between the foot plate of the stapes and the lateral prominence of the lateral semicircular canal. That's the second portion of facial canal. Okay. Finally, we have emerged. Think about facial nerve, which has been emerged out of the stylomastoid foramen. Now we will be talking about the extracranial course of facial nerve. Now you can see here this stylomastoid foramen, as I told you that this styloid process is, it's derived from the second branchial arch. You know that bony component of the second, and which other thing stapes. Okay, stapes also from the second branchial arch. So, and the ligament attached to this stylohyoid ligament also is from the second branchial arch. So, this is mastoid. So this foramen, stylomastoid, is between styloid process and mastoid process, through which the facial nerve emerges out. Now, in its extracranial course, as I told you, this will wind laterally, rather, this will pass laterally to the styloid process. Okay, this you're seeing diagram is from the outside, because you're also seeing is the external acoustic meter. That means it's the outside view. So it is winding laterally to the styloid process. One thing now, the first branch in its extracranial course will be the posterior auricular nerve. Right? This is the posterior auricular nerve. This posterior auricular nerve will ascend up behind the external auditory meatus and between the external auditory meatus and the mastoid process. It will ascend up, right? And it will supply the posterior auricularis muscle, intrinsic muscles of the pinna, and it will also supply the occipital valleys of occipitofrontalis muscle. Don't forget this portion of the facial, the internal acoustic meatus, there were three nerves and they were being perfused. There was a blood supply that was labyrinthine arteries, right? So because of this intrapetrous, it's a cave-like course within a bone. So you need to have blood supply also there. Partly there was labyrinthine vessels, and from the in the portion which was in relation to the internal ear. And here it will be the stylomastoid branch of the posterior auricular artery, right? Or sometimes branch from the occipital artery, which enter here to supply the facial nerve in this canal. Okay, so it has a blood supply, and that has a role, like, let me tell you, that has a role in Bell's palsy. Ischemic injuries ho sakti hain yahan pe. Okay, so that was the first branch, posterior auricular nerve. Then this will give a branch to the posterior valley of the digastric, as well as this the same. The nerve to stylohyoid may be a direct branch from the main trunk of the facial nerve, or maybe through this digastric branch, it will continue to supply stylohyoid muscle as well. Both of the two muscles which elevate the hyoid, they are derived from the second branchial arch. Now its further course will be in the parotid gland. So this nerve, it enters in the parotid gland and then it splits into two divisions. One is temporofacial branch and cervicofacial branch, right? Remember, the parotid gland was having two portions, a deep portion and a superficial portion. So the two divisions split there between the superficial and deep portion of the parotid gland. Okay. So extracranial course, you can see, is the stelloid process. So facial nerve winds lateral to the stelloid process, and this is the posteromedial surface of the parotid. Remember, where does facial nerve enters into the parotid gland from? In the posteromedial surface of the parotid gland. This is mastoid, and this is the mandible, the ramus of mandible, which here you have on inside is medial pterygoid muscle attached. On lateral surface, it is the masseter attached, right? And this is the portion of parotid gland. So embedded within this parotid gland, there is external carotid artery deep inside, and in between the facial nerve and external artery, it is retromandibular vein. So facial nerve winds behind the stelloid process, then enters the parotid gland through the posteromedial surface of the gland and winds laterally, coming to lie in lateral relation to external carotid and retromandibular vein, and will cross, within this substance, it will divide into its 5 terminal branches. And remember, all of these branches, they will emerge here from the anterior border of the anterior margin of the parotid gland. Okay. Extracranial course and relations may, as I told you, when it enters in the parotid gland, remember, this parotid gland has a superficial bigger part and a deeper smaller part. Both of them are communicated by an isthmus. And this facial nerve, when it enters the parotid gland, it splits into two branches, temporofacial and cervicofacial divisions, crossing above and below the isthmus. And this plane is called Petty's fasciovenous plane. Remember, this was important. This has to be taken care while doing parodontectomy operations, because the facial nerve is embedded within this gland. So here you find is the facial nerve, the two divisions. Then from the, this temporofacial nerve, two divisions will arise, temporal branch and zygomatic branch. Then from the cervicofacial division, there will be three branches, buccal branch, and the buccal branch will split into upper and lower buccal. Both will run above and below the parotid duct. And then you have this marginal mandibular branch, and you have the cervical branch. So a little bit correction you can make in this diagram, that a cervical branch emerges at the apex of the